So we need to talk about how the U.S. Coast Guard just opened fire on a U-Haul truck at Alameda, California, when this U-Haul truck was backing up towards the access gate to the base. So apparently on October 23rd, 2025, around 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the U.S. Coast Guard security personnel and law enforcement officers opened fire on a U-Haul truck at the entrance to the U.S. Coast Guard base in Alameda, California, which is technically in Oakland at the bridge access point. The truck had been observed driving erratically and reversing towards a line of armed officers that were blocking the gate and ignoring repeated verbal commands to stop. So the officers posed, and authorities described this as a, quote, direct threat to personal safety. This happened like during hours of after daytime protests against President Donald Trump's immigration enforcement plans that had been largely dispersed, but in the same location where federal agents had staged earlier amid the heightened tensions between law enforcement and protesters. Now, the FBI is currently leading the investigation, and there's no arrests reported as of October 24th in the morning, but there's been videos captured of the incident unfolding by tons of local media outlets like KTVU and KPIX, showing how rapidly this thing unfolded, including the 20 to 30 shots that were fired and bullet holes in the truck's rear. Now, from the morning to the afternoon, there were several hundred protesters that were gathered at the base's East Oakland entrance starting around dawn, blocking the single vehicle access bridge with signs like, quote, protect our neighbors and, quote, no ICE or troops in the bay. And they were aiming to prevent U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents from staging there for potential raids in sanctuary cities like San Francisco, for example. Customs and Border Patrol SUVs arrived. Protesters laid down in the road and formed human chains. In response to this, agents used flashbang grenades and other non-lethals to disperse the crowd, firing at least one towards demonstrators. 2 protesters were injured, including a Christian minister, Jorge Bautista, who was hit in the jaw by a projectile canister without warning, and another man's foot was run over by an SUV. Organizers like Gala King emphasized peaceful solidarity with immigrants in opposition to, quote, militarization of the area. By the time late afternoon rolled around, California Highway Patrol declared an unlawful assembly, leading to arrests and crowd clearance. And then around evening time, President Trump announced via Truth Social that he was suspending the San Francisco, quote, surge after talks with Mayor Daniel Lurie, who basically highlighted the falling crime rates and local progress in order to dissuade President Trump from sending federal troops into the area, or federal law enforcement officers into the area. Surprisingly, this is one of those times where Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, actually praised the decision that President Trump made, saying that he was, quote, listening to reason. However, despite these conversations, there are still around a dozen protesters that remain near the entrance by nightfall, along with media. Now, this base serves as a staging point for Department of Homeland Security operations, including Customs and Border Patrol, due to its secure location on an island which is accessible only via a bridge. Now, the U-Haul truck was parked near the protest site and was noticed by demonstrators at the time. And then around 9:45 to 9:55 p.m., the truck started approaching the bridge entrance ramp after most of the protesters had left. And then you could hear one of the demonstrators shouting, "Bring the U-Haul back," in video footage, which suggests that the initial confusion or attempt to de-escalate might have gotten misconstrued just because the driver may not have known what was going on. At the time, the security personnel, including Coast Guard, police, were in helmets with their guns drawn, and they were blocking the road and issuing verbal commands to the driver to stop the vehicle. By 10 p.m. approximately, the driver had ignored the commands, was driving erratically, and reversing/backing up towards the ramp towards officers, accelerating as if they were planning on ramming the barrier or line of personnel. So the security officers from the Coast Guard fired dozens of live rounds, which numbered in 20 to 30, according to personal eyewitness accounts, at the truck. Now, once the truck started getting shot at, the truck halted and stopped. The driver paused, looked down at his lap for like 30 seconds, maybe looking at his phone or looking to see if he was injured. And then he shifted into drive and moved forward away from the barrier towards the remaining protesters and media that was sitting at the Embarcadero and Denison Street intersection. Stopped briefly there, and then he drove off pretty calmly, which is surprising considering he just had like 30 rounds fired at him. And then approximately from 10:05 to 10:10, the driver returned to the area, parked the truck on a nearby street, and fled on foot. Now, authorities are attempting to locate and secure the abandoned vehicle at this time, and then the bridge has been cordoned as a crime scene with shell casings collected from the Coast Guard law enforcement agents that were firing at the vehicle. Now, one of the eyewitnesses there, whose name is Rick Villeraman, who is a KPIX chief photographer who happened to be on scene, described it as, quote, he just hit the gas and he sped towards them, and then about 20 or 30 rounds were fired. Now, so far, there's been no confirmed injuries to officers or Coast Guard personnel. 2 men arrived at local hospitals with gunshot wounds shortly after the incident. One is believed to be the driver, with the other's identity still unclear at this time. There's unverified reports that mention one bystander also being hit, but there's no official confirmation on that. There are visible bullet holes in this truck on the rear door and on the side, and there's no property damage that's been reported thus far. Now, the California Highway Patrol assisted in clearing any lingering crowds for vehicle exits, and protesters have been moved behind caution tape away from the scene of what's been called a crime, and they seem to be pretty shocked currently. Now, the FBI is currently probing and spearheading this investigation, coordinating with Coast Guard, Alameda Police Department, and California Highway Patrol, among other local partners. And the focus of the investigation is going to include use of force review, driver's intent / their motivation, and potential protest ties. Currently, people are speculating that the driver is still at large with no name or description. He was wearing a face mask at the time, like one of those like blue masks that people typically wear. And there's no arrest details that have been released either at this time. And the truck has been impounded for forensics. As of October 24th of 2025, there's been no further updates. However, the Coast Guard emphasized that the shooting was, quote, defensive in nature after failed de-escalation. And the U.S. Coast Guard X account even posted a blog post about this saying, quote, at approximately 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursday, Coast Guard security personnel standing watch on Coast Guard Island observed a vehicle driving erratically and attempting to back into the Coast Guard base Alameda. Coast Guard personnel issued multiple verbal commands to stop the vehicle. The driver failed to comply and proceeded to put the vehicle in reverse. When the vehicle's actions posed a direct threat to the safety of Coast Guard and security personnel, law enforcement officers discharged several rounds of live fire. No Coast Guard personnel were injured in the incident, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation is the lead agency for this investigation, and we are coordinating with our law enforcement partners. Additional information will be released as it becomes available. Now, obviously, tensions remain high amid all of the ongoing protests across the country with immigration enforcement and Customs and Border Protection and Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE, and all that stuff, and with all the federal law enforcement officials that are being sent into all these cities that are considered by the administration to be safe havens for illegal immigrants. And so this is going to continue to develop, and I think we're going to see more strange things like this happen, but that's the story. More than likely what happened is there was a miscommunication and the guy didn't understand what he should have been doing or wasn't paying attention to the law enforcement officials. He might have been listening to somebody that was a protester telling him to do something. Who knows? But I think that they're going to release some updates throughout the day as more information becomes available. Okay, guys, that's it for the daily roll-up for today. I appreciate you watching the video up until this point. If you stuck around till now, you're honestly helping support the channel more than you know, because retention rates do help boost this video in the algorithm. It does support the channel. So if you want to support the channel in other ways, you can like this video, you can leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can share this video with your friends. I will say, just for those of you that have been around for a while, I'm going to continue to make the short videos in addition to the long video every day. But just for the long video, for the purposes of the long video, if I want the videos to perform well, I can't be covering like 7 different stories because the algorithm doesn't know what to do with it, doesn't know who to recommend it to, and things like that. And so that's just kind of what I've learned from experience. So I'm going to keep the longer videos focused on one centralized topic, but I'll still continue to post like 5 or 4 shorts that are based on like various different things happening around the world. So if you want to see different stories, we'll have those up. And then if you want to see something that's a little bit more of a deep dive, we'll have the long videos as well. So again, I appreciate you guys supporting the channel. I appreciate you helping enable me to continue to do this. Obviously, I can't keep doing this if it doesn't make enough money to pay for the editing costs, which is really what it comes down to, because I don't make any money. Like, I make just enough to pay my editors. And that's just how it is. you know, for now. But that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Eventually, hopefully, if this stuff takes off, then we'll be able to do a little bit more and be able to get more videos out there because we'll be able to afford more editors and expand. So, but I appreciate the support regardless. Please let us know what you thought about this video in the comments below. It helps us out. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video.